Section 4. Alternative Conventions. It is clear that there must be some mechanism for raising children, and clear that if Hume is right about children needing the care of more than one parent, that mechanism will need to appeal to something more than natural maternal concern. So there must be some convention for the raising of children. But there are clearly a variety of solutions to the problem posed by Hume's trivial anatomical observation, and it might be argued that chastity and modesty are not, after all, supported by a Humean system, since it will not pick out the convention as preferred. Strict conjugal fidelity on the part of both sexes would seem to provide the requisite assurance of paternity. Also, alternative arrangements for child care would eliminate the need for such assurance. Men might care for wives' children, children might be cared for by their maternal family, the care of children might be a public matter, etc. When faced with this array, the choice of chastity and modesty may well seem like an arbitrary and unnatural contrivance, given the degree to which women's natures must be altered to achieve the virtues. Since one of these alternative arrangements would eliminate the need for women to suppress their sexuality, we may be inclined to think that one of these arrangements, other than the convention of chastity and modesty, is the general social interest. Alternative forms of child care, however, are not really to the point. Hume is not claiming that under any conditions chastity and modesty will come to be perceived as virtues for women, any more than he claims that only private ownership of a specific form will meet the need for a convention determining the distribution of external goods. So it is fair enough for Hume to build his account of chastity and modesty upon certain views of society and family. The need for chastity and modesty arises within the context of private property, patrilineal descent of property, and a patriarchal society. That other forms of child care are possible does not show that chastity and modesty to be arbitrary, and hence does not undermine the claim that these are in the general social interest. Even within the context of a patriarchal and patrilineal society, Hume's asymmetrical solution is not the only one. The relevant convention could be one of fidelity to the marriage bed on the part of both sexes, with the corresponding bad reputation and attitudes of modesty for both sexes. Hume is right that, given the background conditions, society has a greater interest in chastity for women, but it does not follow that men's virtues can have no role to play in maintaining the female virtues. The convention of modesty plays an instrumental role in ensuring that women are indeed chaste, but other solutions could well involve inculcating the right attitudes into men. We could develop an interest in the chastity and modesty of men as instrumental virtues, just as we do with women. We might well ask, then, why not chastity for men too, as a way of ensuring conjugal fidelity in women? Increased chastity in men would reduce the need for modesty in women. We could get the same level of assurance without the level of hardship that modesty imposes on women. One answer is that the problems posed for men and for women by the need for conjugal fidelity in women are structurally different. For men, the problem of assuring paternity via a convention of male chastity has the structure of a prisoner's dilemma. Even if an individual man is willing to be chaste, his being chaste does not solve the paternity problem for him, as his wife's chastity does. What he must be sure of is that other men are chaste. Each man has a direct interest in others being chaste, and no direct interest in being chaste himself. He is best off defecting from an agreement on chastity, since he has nothing to lose. In the absence of external penalties, men have no incentive to be chaste. And, as the earlier discussion indicates, the lack of available evidence makes imposing external penalties problematic. The incentive structure for women is different. While it is true that for any individual woman, she is best off if the convention exists and she does not have to follow it herself, women risk something that men do not. They run a risk of being found out, and in doing so they risk their status as wives and the paternity of their children. Given the appropriate background structures, chastity and modesty in women is the solution to a prisoner's dilemma for men. Conclusion. This latter feature does seem to make chastity and modesty atypical. The typical pattern is that the conventions arise on the basis of self-interest on the part of those who will be obligated by the convention. But here we have virtues for one group arising, at least in part, on the basis of the self-interest of another group. Women do have an interest in being chaste given the social conditions, but the strength of the virtues depends on men's lack of interest in being chaste themselves, and their ability to get women to take up the burden. If chastity and modesty for women are obvious artifices, the perspective from which they are obvious is that of male self-interest. Men don't need to be chaste and modest themselves if they can get women to do it for them. Where there is no self-interest, there is no convention. Men don't need to worry about being chaste and modest themselves because it is not in their self-interest to do so, but they do need to support the convention of chastity and modesty for women because it is in their interest that such a convention be maintained. Chastity and modesty are atypical virtues because the self-interest that explains the existence of the convention is, at least in part, the interest of those who do not bear the burden of the virtuous behavior. But then that atypical feature detracts in no way from the features that make them artificial virtues. They are thoroughly typical both in being based on a non-natural motive and in the moral approbation attached to them arises from the recognition of the practice as generally beneficial to society. Despite their atypical features, Hume was right in declaring that we would find in them still more conspicuous instances of the principles that he has insisted on.